Hey, besties.
So this is a little bit of an unconventional podcast, as you might be able to tell. Hello. So I guess we'll start off with names and pronouns.
Well, I'm Luca, and I use he, they, it pronouns, or basically just anything except she, her pronouns.
I'm Kaylee. I use she, her pronouns, or I guess, they, whatever. I don't care.
I'm Kaitlynn. I use she, her, or she, they, anything, really.
Same boat there, Kaitlynn. Same. So today we have a little bit of a last minute podcast to throw together for you. We got some news articles together. Although as we were getting ready to film this podcast, we all actually got the news that Betty White tragically passed away just 2 weeks before her 100th birthday.
Yeah.
And I feel like we should take a minute to appreciate the amazing woman that Betty White was. I don't know.
A legend.
She was a legend. She was more than sliced bread.
She is. She was.
No, and you know what's funny? When I was like 13 years old, I came up with this saying out of nowhere. I was like, Betty White's older than sliced bread. Not even knowing that she factually was older than sliced bread. And then when I found that out, my mind was like fucking blown. I was like, oh, what? So yeah. And it's also really sad because she died on New Year's Eve as well. Not only 2 weeks before her birthday, but on New Year's Eve. Like, she didn't even get to see 2022.
Yeah.
So
maybe that was a sign.
Okay, we're actually going to talk about that because not only did Betty White tragically pass away, however, Colorado is also on fire.
Yeah, I did hear that Colorado was on fire.
And let's all remember back in 2020 when we started off the year with Australia in fire.
Australia's on fire again. I mean, that makes sense.
That was
I feel like they're always on fire.
But, that lasted for 3 months back in 2020. So now that Colorado's on fire going into 2022, that's a bit concerning.
Yeah.
Yeah. Getting closer to home.
Let's see. There's a new Omicron variant that is floating around. It's a lot more deadly. That's a variant of COVID. So stay safe, besties, everyone else.
Yes, this is the one that's affecting children a lot more, right?
I think so, yeah. It's a lot more infectious and a lot more deadly. Anyways, in slightly lighter news, this headline kind of had me and Luca chuckling a little bit earlier. And I believe the last name is pronounced Jeffrey. Anyone correct me if I'm wrong. But it says Virginia Jeffrey's lawyers demand proof that Prince Andrew can't sweat.
What? It's about if Prince Andrew can sweat or not. What?
Well, it's kind of okay. Once you hear it, it's like relevant, but also like it just sounds really funny.
Yeah, so this is an article from CNN. It says Prince Andrew has been asked to provide documents proving his quote unquote alleged medical inability to sweat. In a court filing by attorneys for Virginia Roberts Jeffrey, who has accused the royal of sexual assault in a U.S. civil lawsuit. So then it says in the court document filed Thursday, Jeffrey's attorneys also ask for any documents relating to anyone Andrew met at Pizza Express restaurant in Woking, England, or at Club Tramp nightclub in London, and to his travel to and from those places. In her lawsuit, Jeffrey alleges she was trafficked by Jeffrey Epstein and forced to have sex with his friends, including the prince, and that Andrew was aware that she was underage, 17 at the time, in the U.S. Prince Andrew strongly denies these allegations. Of course he was. And then it says, in a BBC interview in 2019, Andrew said he had taken his elder daughter to a party at a pizza restaurant on the night in 2001. when it was alleged that he had had sex with Jeffrey. He also said in the interview that for many years he could not sweat, countering the allegations made by Jeffrey that he was sweating profusely before they had sex in London when she was 17. And he said, "I have no recollection of ever meeting this lady." In claims made prior to filing her lawsuit, Jeffrey alleges that in 2001, Epstein brought her to London, where she was introduced to Prince Andrew and went dancing at a nightclub with Epstein, his then girlfriend Ghislaine Maxwell, and the Prince. So basically, he's saying, I could not have had sexual intercourse with this 17-year-old girl because she said I was sweating, and I medically can't sweat.
Okay, now the article makes sense.
Yeah.
Title, but
Okay,
the
now I need to
title.
know. Does he actually sweat or does he not?
I want to know.
Now I need to know.
And then our last thing before we move on to some more lighthearted topics, I wanted to talk about something that's a little bit close to home. Recently in my hometown, basically, of Harrisonburg, Virginia, there was a serial killer, or potential serial killer, alleged serial killer. His name was Anthony Robinson, and there's not a whole lot of information out there right now about him in general. But the police believe that he met women on dating apps and then met up with them in like hotel rooms and stuff. And then he would kill them and then use a shopping cart to transport their bodies and dump them. And he was found because here in Harrisonburg, he dumped 2 women in a vacant lot. And Luca actually knows the area as well. It's not like the best area to dump a body. It's a very highly trafficked area.
Was this by
must have been fucking stupid.
It was behind like Lowe's and right in front of like a motel and like an empty lot. So it was like there was cameras everywhere. They literally saw him on camera pushing the bodies in the shopping cart.
I don't know how he wasn't caught like sooner.
Well, I don't think they caught him on camera in Fairfax, but they caught him on camera in Harrisonburg, and that's how they found him. And they had, one of the women was from Harrisonburg, the other one was from Charlottesville, that were found here, and they had been killed at 2 different times, but they were found together as far as I can tell. And then there were 2 women found in Fairfax County. They were found in a large plastic container, and they were found like really close to a Target shopping cart. So the media and the police have started calling him the shopping cart killer, which you should never name a serial killer. Just throwing that out there. Anyone that watches true crime, anyone that's like investigates true crime in any capacity, you know that only sensationalizes them more. But I believe that the police in this case actually gave him the name the shopping cart killer.
Yeah.
That was not very smart of them.
Right.
Most of them already have a big ego. That's why they're going around killing women, because they have ego issues.
Right. And a couple of my coworkers and I have done some digging. We found him on Facebook. And it looks like he has kids as well. And they look relatively young too. So that's another thing. So it's an ongoing investigation. They're still looking into it. They're still working on identifying one of the bodies. So 2 bodies were found in Harrisonburg, and they've identified both of those women. 2 bodies were found in Fairfax County, Virginia, and they're pretty certain they've identified one of them, and they are currently working on identifying the other. So the one that they believe they've identified, she was 5 months pregnant at the time that she was murdered. And her mother identified her based on a tattoo that she had. And then the other woman, who they're not sure if they've identified or not, the police, this news articles that I've been able to find have found, is that the police were flying to California, because she was originally from California visiting DC. They were flying to California to collect DNA samples from her family members to see if it was a match. And so yeah, they're working on it.
So how far away is Fairfax County from Harrisonburg?
So let me see here. Well, he's originally from DC.
Okay, so he's from DC.
Yeah, so he's from DC. Let me pull up directions to Fairfax County just in general from here.
Oh, is Fairfax County just DC area? Or is that what DC is in?
So no. So Fairfax is about 2 hours away from here.
Okay.
And that was just another place that he was at.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's kind of close to DC. But yeah, he's been around. And one of the women that was found in Harrisonburg, she was from Charlottesville, which is about 45 minutes south of Harrisonburg.
Okay.
Yeah. And one of the women found in Fairfax, I believe she was from either Fairfax or DC. And then the other woman, they believe that she was from California visiting Washington, D.C.
Okay.
So they said that he met them on dating apps and then would meet up with them at hotel rooms, and then he would kill them. But that raises the question for me, because their bodies were found together. Like the two women in Fairfax were found in the same container. And I believe the same thing to be the case here in Harrisonburg, because
yeah, weren't the shopping carts found like together? Or
like it was like
together?
one shopping cart. There was one shopping cart found next to the women in Fairfax. And then I think on the cameras, they saw him pushing a shopping cart here in Harrisonburg.
Okay.
But I believe they had to have been found together, because if there had been a body dumped in that lot for 2 weeks, they would have found it before then.
Right.
So then that raises the question for me, where was he keeping these bodies? Because they died, like they went missing like quite a ways apart.
I mean, did he have the hotel room for the entire time? Would that have been like where he would have kept the body, was in the hotel room and just like been like the do not disturb sign on the door?
I don't know, because one of the women was from Charlottesville, which is 45 minutes away. And I guess he could have come to Harrisonburg to meet up with him, but I feel like it's more likely that that would have been in Charlottesville.
Right. I mean, if he was like going on like a Tinder date, then maybe he could have been like, hey, this is like Harrisonburg's middle ground for us to meet at. Like,
well, I mean, he met them at motels, so it's weird. It's weird.
It is weird.
Yeah, and I feel like it's less likely for a woman to go that far for a Tinder date than it is for a man to go the other way.
Right. Because I wouldn't go a certain distance to meet up with someone.
No.
Right.
So I don't know. It's all just so weird to me. But I'm just waiting on more information to come out.
And we'll like update that as it comes out.
We plan on having updates in the future episodes as we get more information. But right now, everything is allegedly. We have no proof. He has not been proven guilty in a court of law. There is no current DNA evidence that has been released to the public. This is all just speculation and rumor. So please don't come at my throat. So with that, Bestie, you had some news that you wanted to talk about.
Well, I did want, before the year is over, I did want to talk about, there were two things that I wanted to talk about, actually. I did want to go over the people who have come out in 2021. So there was obviously Jojo Siwa, which was a pretty big one that I thought was really important and really cool for kids to see. A lot of parents had told their kids to stop watching her, but I really doubt kids nowadays are doing that, especially if they have the internet.
Right.
She's such an amazing person, and she would be such good representation for kids to be able to see, just to look up to, whether she's LGBT or not, but it helps that she's LGBT.
Yeah.
She officially came out as just queer, I think. I don't remember like if she ended up coming out as a lesbian or pansexual or like with a certain label. But she had said, someone had asked her like what the label was, and she had said, I don't know, bisexual, pansexual, queer, lesbian, gay, straight. I always just say gay because it just kind of covers it, or queer because I think the keyword is cool. I like queer. She said, technically, I would say that I'm pansexual because that's how I have always been my whole life. It's just my human is my human. So like pansexual, but like more queer, more of a open label. The next person would be Lux Pascal. So Pedro Pascal's sister came out as a trans woman. And I think he was in like The Mandalorian and stuff like that. I've heard his name a few times. I don't keep up with those things, but I know I've heard his name mentioned a lot.
Lux Pascal?
I think it was Pedro.
It's Pedro Pascal's sister.
Okay.
And apparently her family was super supportive and has been super supportive of her transition.
So Pedro Pascal was in Game of Thrones, Narcos. He was in The Mandalorian, The Great Wall, Kingsman: The Gold Circle, Equalizer 2, Wonder Woman 1984, and We Can Be Heroes. So
okay, a decent amount of things. Like he'd be recognizable.
Yeah, just for reference for anyone that might have seen those movies but doesn't know actors, because I'm terrible with actors. So he's been in things that you might know.
Yeah. The next person is a video game streamer and Twitch personality. Their name is Robin Twerker. They came out as transgender in February through Twitter and Instagram posts. I've seen them a few times on TikTok, and it says that he's still using he, him pronouns, but came out as a trans woman and wanted their fans to experience the transition with them. So they haven't picked out maybe a new name or new pronouns or anything like that yet. And they want their fans to go through that with them.
That's cool.
They are also the editor for Jacksepticeye.
Oh yeah. And they're amazing. Definitely go check them out if you haven't already.
I mean, I feel like everyone affiliated with Jacksepticeye is amazing.
Honestly, Jacksepticeye is such a nice person.
Like I am still. It's not. I know I'm gonna go a little off topic, but I'm
okay.
That he was able to raise $5 million for Thankmas. And for you, those of you who don't know, Thankmas is a charity that Jacksepticeye is a part of every year, and he was able to raise $5 million this year to be able to make that would, I think it would equate to 500 homes that were 3D printed, and it is going to be like a development down in somewhere in Mexico that they're going to build these homes, and that's like 500 homes that families are going to be able to have that they didn't have before.
That's amazing.
Like amazing what he has done.
I really enjoyed this year around Thanksgiving watching a lot of like Twitch streamers and like just like the things that people do around Thanksgiving, the donations and stuff that they do. I watched one where Lil Simsy went around on Twitch and donated a lot of, like, it wasn't like her, it was what are they called?
It was Tiltify.
Yeah, Tiltify donated a bunch of money like in her name to like these people. Like she went with her followers, and then her followers gave like helped meet follow goals for these people and stuff like that, and like things went to like cancer, or one was really cool. It was trying to think of what it was called. It was called Able Gamers. I had never heard of that before, and it was a really cool organization where they like try to make games more disability friendly and make events more disability friendly, I believe is what they do.
Yeah, they make sorry, Able Gamers helps like make the gaming community more accessible for people with disabilities, and like make controllers easier for like people to use, those people who have the disabilities. It makes it easier for them to be able to use.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, I want to look into them a little bit more and work with them at some, like donate to them at some point.
Tiltify was also the company that helped with Thankmas, and for Thankmas this year, the total amount raised was $7,613,750.33. So that will equate to, I think, 760 homes.
That's amazing.
God.
Yeah. So their goal was to make 1,000 homes, but I mean, even like 760 is better than
that's incredible.
What there was.
So our next person that came out this year was Demi Lovato. They came out as non-binary with they them pronouns and as pansexual. I don't think that they were out as pansexual before, so I think that was a this year thing too.
Yeah, I think before that it was kind of hinted at, or like,
yeah, just not like openly.
Yeah, it just wasn't like at the forefront.
Yeah, and I think a lot of like I have a few more people, but the amount of people like celebrity wise or influencer wise that came out this year definitely had a big, like, it was because of COVID, I think, because people were at home a lot because of quarantine, and they were able to like look at themselves and realize things about themselves. I think it also helped Elliot Page coming out at the end of 2020 as well. So that helped push people to be more open. The next person I have is Kalani, who is a R&B singer-songwriter. They came out as so they had been out as queer and bisexual in the past, but now officially is out as a lesbian. So our next person has come out
numerous times.
Has come out as different religions, different mental health issues, different identities. Trisha Paytas, our problematic queen herself. But so they are officially out as non-binary, and I believe use she they pronouns.
That's what I could find.
Yeah. I have a bunch of opinions on Trisha Paytas, as does everybody else on the internet. But they are a pretty big influencer, whether it's good influence or bad influence. A lot of people pay attention to her.
They recently got married.
Yeah.
Oh yes, I did see that.
The next person I have is Laganja Estranja. Came out from RuPaul's Drag Race, came out as transgender.
Yeah.
And I'm here for that. I love when drag queens come out as trans. I love that doing drag helps aid people in learning more about their identities and being able to come out. And it also helps promote the fact that drag isn't just for men dressing up as women. Women can do it, trans men, trans women can do it, anybody can do drag, whether it's to be a drag queen or a drag king or whatever. It's just to express an exaggerated version of femininity or masculinity. The next one is I might butcher the last name, but it's Hikaru Utada, which is one of the biggest selling artists in Japan, and they came out as non-binary.
So many people binary this year.
Yeah, a lot of people came out as non-binary. I think so. My opinion on gender is that every single person has their own individual version of that, an individual version of gender. In the same way that like not like everybody can look at one color and nobody's gonna see that same color the same way.
Gender is a construct.
Yeah, it is a social
real.
construct, and gender and sexuality can be very fluid as well. Like you can identify as one thing today and a different thing tomorrow, and I don't see an issue with that. The next person on our list is Robin from Batman.
Like, okay, but the actual character,
the actual character Robin from the comic books.
Okay.
Had show in the one of the latest Batman comics. Shows his interest in men. I believe it had shown I had seen a photo of him talking with a man about how they had wished they finished like their date or something like that. So he came out as bisexual. And our next person is Elvira. She came out earlier this year, recently, I think within the last couple months. Elvira, the Mistress of Dark, reveals that she's been in a 19-year relationship with a woman and identifies as bisexual, which I thought was really cool. I feel like we knew, but also how cool is it that she hid a relationship for 19 years as that big of a celebrity? Like, what the fuck?
right. I would have been.
And imagine dating Elvira and being able to hide that from people. Like, I could never.
I mean, like, look at how cool my like significant other is. Look at this.
She's fucking gorgeous.
Right. She really is
my partner.
Right. The next person we have is Stevie Lane. Eminem's youngest child came out as bisexual and gender fluid over TikTok. It says in June they asked their followers to call them Stevie, and they use she, he, and they pronouns, which I thought is super cool. And I'm pretty sure Eminem was like super supportive of it from what I saw.
Yeah, I believe so.
He is we were just talking about it, but he is such a nice person. Like, he gets a bad rap because, like, I don't know, he's like one of like the most known rappers, and a lot of parents don't care for him and swearing and like stuff like that. But like, he's genuinely a good person.
But yeah, he is a very good person.
Like, I'm pretty sure. So he used to, in his music, he used to use gay as a slur, obviously. But as soon as, who was he friends with? Elton John? I could be wrong. He was friends with a queer person, and that person had asked him to stop. And I think almost immediately he had stopped using those words in his music. The next person we have that came out this year was Gigi Good, which was another RuPaul Drag Race star, and came out as trans non-binary in a post on Instagram. Here for all these drag queens, love them, except RuPaul, we don't stan.
No.
And then the last person I have is Mae Martin. And I don't know if you've watched the show. It's a Netflix series called Feel Good. It's her series or their series. And they created that show, and in the second season of that, they explore their gender identity and stuff like that in the show. Like the character does. And her as a person. Like, because it's about her life. And it's pretty cool. So that's what I have on people who came out this year. So very, and there was a lot more people than that, but those were the people that like I recognized.
Yeah. Which is crazy. People all these years.
I can't wait for the next season of Umbrella Academy. I personally am right, and I am personally hoping that they make Vanya trans.
I hope so too.
Like, because they don't have to, but like I'm sure Elliot Page would still do the show. Elliot Page obviously is still doing the show, but I think it would be so cool if they made her trans because they can get away with it.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure Gerard Way wrote like the comic book, and Gerard Way is a he/they.
I believe
like,
so.
Non-binary person.
Okay, we stand Gerard Way on a number of different.
I have an Umbrella Academy book. Here is the book. It is
Wait.
The Making of Umbrella Academy. Let's go.
So we wanted to talk about the movie Encanto.
Yeah.
I haven't watched it yet.
Wait, what did you say?
I didn't watch it yet.
Oh, you didn't? You and Kaylee haven't watched it yet. So I'm not going to like go into detail about it. I'm just going to talk about the fact that whether or not Mirabel, the main character, is going to be able to become a Disney princess. Like an official Disney princess. There's only like 12 of them, I believe. Plus there is, I'll read the list of them.
Yeah.
There is Tiana, Moana, Ariel, Mulan, Belle, Pocahontas, Snow White, Cinderella, Rapunzel, Merida, Jasmine, Aurora, and then so that's all of the Disney princesses. And then Elsa and Anna aren't Disney princesses, but they're included in a lot of Disney princess promotion.
I think that's so strange that they're not Disney princesses.
Well, technically, after Frozen 2, they're both queens, and one
Okay.
grows too much money for them to put them in the princess lineup, because then they would include them in the box sets, and then they wouldn't be able to sell the dolls on their own.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so it's money.
That's not official. That's just a theory.
Yeah. But they are included, like it says, discover and rediscover your favorite princess and Frozen films. So like they're included in like all of the promotion, like Disney princess promotion. And on the official Disney or princess.disney.com, Princess Raya, she's not an official Disney princess yet, but her picture is like in some of the promotion. So I'm going to assume that they're going to be making her a Disney princess.
That is also a movie I have not seen yet either.
It was really good.
I think
but
on Disney Plus, is it free now?
Yeah.
Raya?
Yeah.
I think Encanto is too.
Okay.
Yeah, Encanto came out free on Disney.
Okay, yeah, I guess if Encanto's out and free, then Raya should be.
Yeah.
So I know what I'm watching later.
Yeah, for sure. So with Mirabel, I believe she meets all of the requirements. So the character must have a central role in an animated Disney Pixar film, and it can't be, and the character cannot be the star of a sequel. They have to have come out in the original.
So they have to have like their own movie.
Yeah. So the only reason Ariel's daughter is not a Disney princess is because she debuted in a sequel.
Okay, that's understandable.
And the character must be human, or have humanoid appearance in the case of Ariel and formerly Tinkerbell.
Tinkerbell was a princess. What?
Tinkerbell was a princess, but I think they took her off.
Why would they take her
to be
off?
sold with the princess stuff. I remember I got a box set that was all of the Disney princesses, and it was Tinkerbell.
Yeah. Let's see. Character must be central role. The character. Okay, so it says the character must. Why is my screen doing that? The character must be royal by birth, royal by marriage, or do a heroic deed. In the case of like that was only put there for Marlon. I got really dark. I'm so sorry.
You did. You got so dark, but that was.
But is in the case of Mulan, didn't she marry the prince?
No,
he's not a prince. He's just a general.
Yeah.
Oh, he was just a general.
Yeah, but
yeah.
It's been a while since I watched Mulan.
Yeah, no, she's not. Yes. like in her movies, but she did a huge act of heroism, so
Yeah.
she counts.
She's no, the fuck.
And it says the character's film should not have been an overwhelming success or an underwhelming failure.
That's why
So that's another reason that Anna and Elsa are not Disney princesses, because there was an overwhelming success.
Yeah, and that's why Kita can't be a Disney princess, because the movie Atlantis didn't make enough money.
Mm-hmm. And it says along with it, the character must have massive appeal and recognition towards viewers and audience. So like people should be able to recognize them whether they like watch Disney or not.
I feel like there's got to be a fine line between that one and the last one. I've got it pulled up as well, but like between like the overwhelming success or underwhelming failure,
and then also being recognizable to most people.
Because like I feel like anyone could recognize Anna and Elsa.
Yeah.
Because it was such a success. I think that's also weird that because they were such a success, they're not allowed.
I think it's solely for money purposes, because as we were saying before, like they make a lot more money on them as their own thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now they're both queens, so
yeah.
they can't be princesses.
So with Mirabel from Encanto, I think she meets most of these or all of them. The movie is doing really well, and since it's during COVID, and I don't think it went out in theaters. I could be wrong. Correct me on that if I'm wrong.
For like a time.
I think it did. It might have. I think it did. But like I don't think it's an overwhelming success. So like I don't think she's gonna do too well to be a princess. But I think she's going to do like the perfect amount, like money wise. Mm-hmm. And then she is the star of her own movie. The weird one would be the character must be royal by birth, marriage, or do a heroic deed. So to me, looking at Encanto, so her family is basically in charge of like their town. Like they would be royalty, but not necessarily royalty. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like not literally royalty, but like royalty enough. Like, and she would be technically a princess. Yeah. But if they don't consider that, I think she does do a good enough act of a like heroism, because this is a little bit of a spoiler, but she forgives her abuela for the generational trauma and the amount of trauma that was caused to her. And one could argue that that is the biggest act of forgiveness is the biggest act of heroism.
Right.
Yeah. And there was one other unwritten rule that I saw the Super Carlin brothers, they talk about a lot, is the fact that all Disney princesses have a non-human like sidekick, or an animal sidekick, and she doesn't technically have one. Like she has the house, but it's not like an animal, it's a house. But like they are pairing a lot of her merch with, there's like this butterfly in the movie that's like important, but not like a sidekick, like not like a normal sidekick. So, and if they do decide to make her a Disney princess, an official Disney princess, she would be the first Hispanic Disney, like official Disney princess. And she would also be the first one to be wearing glasses, which apparently most news articles think is more important than her being Hispanic.
Yeah. Which, I mean, I guess if you're counting Elena of Avalor.
Yeah, but she's not an official Disney princess.
She's not. We checked, we double checked, we triple checked. She's not an official Disney princess, but she is a Disney princess.
Like, she's a princess and a Disney character, but she's not an official Disney princess.
In the same way that Sophia the First isn't a Disney princess.
Yeah, and I don't think she has a movie, and if she does, it's just like a Disney Junior movie. It doesn't really count as like an actual Disney princess movie.
Yeah, it's not like, something that was released on, in theaters or on Disney Plus as like a premiere streaming and then regular streaming kind of thing. Like,
Yeah.
it was a Disney Junior original movie.
Yeah, so Mirabel would be the first Hispanic Disney princess.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's extremely underwhelming how nobody is talking about that.
Yeah,
that is very strange.
We're like, not nobody as in like all people, but like nobody as in like news articles and stuff. People like official people who are talking about it. They're not bringing up the fact that she's Hispanic.
It's every single article is first Disney princess wearing glasses, first Disney princess wearing glasses. Like,
yeah, like, which is
all
cool.
the other Disney princesses are based in a time period that was before glasses.
Right.
Like, that is why they don't have glasses.
Like, they could have had that eyesight, but they couldn't do nothing. Now for me to stutter through 9 pages of reading.
Love it. Can't wait. I'm excited.
I love stories. It's 9 pages long. 9 pages.
Yeah. And I like cut a lot. Like, a lot of it is just me copying and pasting from like the original source. There wasn't a lot of sources on it because it was in 1883, 84 it happened. But this is from a town called Wellsboro in Tioga County, Pennsylvania, which is where like I grew up for half my childhood. Like up until 6th grade, I was living there for the most part. So yeah.
I'm shrinking. If you can't tell, I don't know what my chair does, but every once in a while my chair just I don't know why.
So here's some background information. Martha Sylvia was a simple-minded, honest-hearted woman of middle age living in a little hut containing 1 room and a loft, standing on a lot of a few acres of land in Charleston Township on the road leading from this borough to Kaitlynn Hollow, and about 3.5 miles from the borough. Her husband had deserted her, and she lived alone on her little property, doing her own work indoors and out. She found life very hard, for she was a small, weak woman.
Sorry, I was gonna say me too.
Besides her real estate, she owned a cow and 2 heifers, and these animals and a dog consisted of the only living creatures on the place except its owners. If you couldn't tell, this was written a long time ago.
Vibes. Just want to say that now. I love the vibes.
On the 3rd day of April, 1883, Martha was seen by several persons in this borough to whom she was well known. About dusk of that day, she was seen going from the borough toward her home in Charleston, and she was never seen alive after that time.
My chair is...
It gets dark. Never seen again.
She was just never seen alive after that time. That was it.
She was never seen alive after that time. It was known the next day that she would never again be seen on Earth.
She would never be seen again on Earth. That's
dead or alive. She just evaporates.
The moon? Where are we seeing her now? Anywhere else but the Earth? I'm sorry.
She turned into the moon like Sokka's girlfriend.
This is so dark. Why did they? This is a serious topic. This is something tragic, but
you're gonna laugh about so many other things solely because of wording. Like, I'll be honest, solely because of wording, you're gonna think this is so funny. On the night that Martha Sylvia disappeared, I keep wanting to say Silva, but it's Sylvia. She's white.
Not Sylvia.
Yeah. On the night that Martha Sylvia disappeared between 8 and 9 o'clock in the evening, a frame barn belonging to Mr. Charles N. Austin, and standing on the road leading from this borough to Martha's house and about 2.5 miles from the borough was discovered to be on fire. Mr. Austin and several of his neighbors went to the burning building and found it half consumed. While the building was still burning, the men gathered about it discovered something peculiar on the ground under where the burned floor of the barn had been. They gathered snow and extinguished the fire about this queer object. And with long boards, they finally succeeded in dragging it out of the embers. They found that the object drawn from the fire was part of something that had an animal life. They took these remains to Mr. Austin's granary and locked them up. The next morning, they were inspected by Dr. C.W. Webb, and he decided that they were the remains of an adult female human being.
They locked them up?
Yeah, they just kind of put them to the side till the morning.
I'm sorry, but the fact that they said locked them up just makes me think that they were like, oh.
They locked them up,
The
unlike they locked them up, unlike the man locking his barn, which he did not do, which is why someone was able to put a body in there and set it on fire. Maybe if he would have locked his barn.
Yeah, like,
I mean, she might still be dead, but you know,
that barn would still be okay.
right? He would have still had his barn.
Are we victim blaming?
No. He wasn't the victim. I mean, I guess he was because his barn burnt down.
He was
but
part of, like, he was a partial victim. I mean, his barn's gone.
I'm gonna victim blame because he should have locked his barn. I'm not victim blaming Miss Sylvia because we stand her. But we're gonna victim blame what's his face? Mr. Austin.
Mr. Austin.
I also think it's funny that, like, so I grew up with, like, obviously in that town, right? So like some of these names, like, are the last names of, like, kids that I went to school with. And I don't know if they are related, but I'm gonna assume they are because, like, it's a really small town and nobody leaves. So I'm just imagining, like, little, because I moved out of Wellsboro when I was in 6th grade. So I'm imagining little 5th graders reenacting this as, like, a little play. Especially when it gets to the trial, because it's like the word for word, like, trial.
Oh yes, we've got so much more to go through. Okay, so the barn's burned down. They found the body.
Mm-hmm. And they hid her away until the morning. They were like, let's put that to the side. Let's not worry about that till tomorrow. Sounds like a tomorrow
the body,
problem.
but we don't care right now. Let's go.
Yeah, they said that sounds like a tomorrow problem.
The problem for tomorrow, me, not right now. Right now, I'm just going to sleep.
Right. The fire at the barn having burned itself out, search was made. Wait, hold on. The fire at the barn having burned itself out, search was made the next morning in the ashes where the remains were found, and a ring of keys, some buttons, hairpins, and a locket were picked up.
Interesting.
As Mrs. Sylvia had not been seen since the fire, it was suspected that the remains might be hers. District Attorney Foote and others went to her house and found that one of the keys unlocked her door, and another fitted a trunk, and another a satchel in her house. They found her in perfect order. No, not her. She was dead. They found her house in perfect order.
I don't think she could be able to do that.
She wasn't in perfect order.
I don't think she's in perfect order at all.
As if she had just gone out and locked it up and had not returned. Yeah. She didn't return. Ever. These facts confirmed the belief that the remains found in the barn burned were those of Martha Sylvia, and that she had come to her death by some foul means. And the people of that vicinity were not long in reaching a conclusion as to the guilty agent of Martha Sylvia's taking off. George Travis had been seen with her the day before, coming towards this borough early in the day and going from in at nightfall. Suspicion against him was so strong that on the day after the fire, Andrew J. Kippert of Charleston made information charging Travis with the murder of Martha Sylvia. A warrant was issued by Justice Brewster, and Travis was arrested on the street in this borough and locked up in jail. Sorry, these paragraphs are long. George Travis was born in Shippen Township on the 12th day of April, 1853. When he was 9 years of age, his father, Andrew B. Travis, moved to Michigan with his family. From his 16th year, George worked out in Michigan as a common laborer, part of the time in the lumber woods. When he was 27 years old, he married in that state, but his married life was not a happy one, maybe because he was a murderer. And in November 1882, he came to this county, leaving his wife in Michigan. When he came here, he brought his little daughter with him, and he and the child found a home with his brother-in-law, Alexander Reese, who lived in Charleston, 4.5 miles from this borough, about 3/4 of a mile from Miss Sylvia's place. Since coming to the county, Travis had worked for some various persons, but he had not earned or received much money. So he was just out and about doing some odd jobs when he got there.
So he was 4.5 miles from the borough, and then just a half a mile from her house.
He was about 3/4 of a mile.
3/4
from her house, and he was 4.5 miles from the borough.
That's so close.
Yeah,
that makes sense, especially for the time period. Like, you're not going to want to go too far
to murder someone.
I mean, you really can't go too far
to murder someone.
What year was this? This was the 1800s, right?
Yeah,
1882.
So they still had
they have
cars yet? And they just had
what?
Right?
Wait, when were cars invented?
When were what cars?
Cars.
No, there were cars. There were cars because someone has a buggy in this.
A buggy, but wouldn't
cars
that mean
were invented in 1885?
Okay.
Okay, so he's just got like a little horse buggy.
Yeah, there's just a little horse.
Yeah, there's still a little horse. That is like so like.
So you would have to do it within like walking distance or horse distance.
Yeah, because I would assume most people probably didn't have buggies either, especially in like a little small town.
Right. I feel like it was mostly like
because Wellsboro is like in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
So yeah, he's either going on horse or on foot.
Yeah.
Although I would imagine he's on horse if he's toting a body around. It's not easy to drag a body.
I don't know unless he's like
unless he murdered her near the barn.
That's true.
That's true.
Because they were all close to the barn. I'm pretty sure because she lived near the barn. It was like on her way home from the town.
Okay. They could have like crossed paths and he could have been like, okay.
Yeah. Now for the trial.
Oh, you've told me that it's interesting.
Yeah, it's something. Mr. Charles N. Austin was sworn as the first witness. Just so you know, I did cut out a lot of the trial. It was really long, but a lot of it was just like people cross-checking each other and saying the same thing. But I picked out like the important stuff. And we'll link the actual link in the bio so people can go read it if they want to. But Mr. Charles N. Austin was sworn as the first witness. He testified that he lived in Charleston Township and owned the barn destroyed by fire last Tuesday night. The barn was about 1/4 of a mile this side of his house and about 1 1/4 miles from the depot in this borough. Mrs. Sylvia lived alone a mile from the barn, and in going home from Wellsboro, she would go past the barn. I discovered the fire about 20 minutes past 8 o'clock, and when I reached the barn, it was all in flames and some roof boards had fallen. One of the large doors was swinging open, and I could see the wheels of a lumber wagon burning. After the building fell, the men were there discovered something they thought didn't burn like wood. Because it was a lady.
Yeah, human flesh does not burn like wood.
Yeah.
Nope.
I think it's closer to a candle.
Yeah,
Is
I
it?
think so. Like wax.
That's just
Yeah, because that's like things for like human combustion, like
Mhm.
spontaneous like human
But it
combustion.
takes a lot of heat to incinerate an actual like human body, like bones and all.
Yeah, so definitely doesn't burn like wood.
Yeah, like
Not gonna ask
someone
my mother.
fire will not
In a box,
get rid
she
of
was
our
burned.
body.
What is it?
He said, so Austin continues. We threw snow on it and put the put out the fire about it, and it proved to be a mass of flesh. It was 6 or 8 feet from the large doors. We put it in my granary and locked it up. The next morning, Dr. Clarence Webb examined it. There was a small part of the head left, the neck bone, the body, and a portion of the thigh bones. I thought it was the remains of a human being, judging from the teeth. Keys, buttons, and some hairpins were found. A bunch of keys lay on the ground about where we found the remains. I was present when the keys were tried at Miss Sylvia's house. The house was locked, and the large key unlocked the front door. No person was in the house, and no fire was burning. The clock was running, and the bed made up. The barn was used for hay. None of my family were around it Tuesday morning. So that's good. Nobody was like there when it was on fire, like children wise or anything like that.
Though, I mean, like, if someone had been there, maybe then this would not have happened.
Right. Or if someone would have locked their door.
Lock your barn doors. Like, don't be a bitch about it.
And I think that this is still Austin talking. On cross-examination, the witness testified that the barn was not locked. Mr. J.H. Neal was the first person who reached the barn after the fire started, and I was the second. Mr. Neal had a lumber wagon and horse rake stored there. Mrs. Sylvia passed there quite often. The remains found lay on the ground, the floor having burned up. Yeah, so he did not lock his door.
You know, they were just a little more trusting back then. They didn't think that someone was going to put a dead body.
Well, yeah, this barn was like in the middle of like it was a few miles away from town, and it was like a mile, like not even half a mile from his house. So like it makes sense.
Back then, a lot of
it was just, he said it was just used for hay. So like I assume he didn't lose any tools or anything. It said the one man kept some tools there, so he probably lost those, but it sounds like he just lost hay. Which is a lot, which is really like important.
Even in the 50s and 60s, like the 1900s, people weren't locking the doors to their houses because they felt they were safe.
So Charles C. Ward testified next. He says, I reside at Elkland. I went to the jail yesterday in company with Commissioner Peters to see the defendant. Defendant answered some questions. He said he saw Martha Sylvia the day before for the first time after he came to the borough, that he came out of Spalding's store and saw her up the street. Said he saw her after that in Mather's store, but not to speak to her, that he paid her some money in the sitting room at the Wilcox house. That was the last he saw of her was at 4 o'clock that day. He said he went from her house on Tuesday over by Stokesdale and came up the railroad track at Wellsboro. Did not tell what he was doing at her house. I don't know whether he said how much money he paid her. He said he went into a field to get the money, that he kept his money in the field, but he didn't say what field. I don't think he said how he went from Wellsboro. He said he was never on the road where the barn was burned unless it was when he was a small boy. I think it's a little odd that he keeps his money in a field.
Yeah, I was questioning that. Like, why do you keep your money in a field? Like, why not like be like a normal person? Keep it in your mattress. Like even just like keep it on your mattress.
But he doesn't have his own house. He's staying at his brother-in-law's house.
Okay. I mean, still, maybe just like
hide still, I feel like it's a little odd.
Or hide it somewhere like there where you're at. I mean, just I don't know. I mean, maybe he like went by
unless he like
was like.
I feel like it would even make sense if he had like so a lot of people go hunting up there. So I would assume like if they do go hunting, they would have like a deer stand up in a tree or like something like that. Like even that would make sense to maybe keep some money there.
Right. I mean, well, were deer stands popular back then? I don't know.
But it just is a field, so it's not like there were trees or anything. It was in a field.
This is so random.
Like, and how would he know where in the field? It's a field, so like assuming it's a wheat field, it's probably like this tall.
I mean, I guess if you take the same route every single time,
it would like wear down some sort of path.
Yeah, and like I guess if
that's the case, then it'd be dumb to hide your stuff there. But maybe he wasn't hiding it. Maybe he was just putting it there. But I don't know.
But why would you put it in a field?
I don't know.
That's just so
this happened in the 1800s though, so you can't ask nobody.
Right.
If I could have asked somebody, I wouldn't. Because they didn't think that we would want to know these answers. Maybe it was normal back then to keep your money in a field.
I just looked up when tree stand or deer stands were invented, and then it was like a brief history of tree stands, and then it said 1947. So I don't even know if they have deer stands back then.
I'm just imagining like a little tin lunchbox in the middle of a field filled with money.
I mean, I feel like it would be buried at least.
No, but if he's like going out there to get money, it can't be that much buried at least because
right. I mean, like it would be like buried enough so like someone passing by wouldn't see it, but I mean, it was probably buried by like a big rock or something, or something like significant.
Or like, what if he puts it in his little Star Wars tin lunchbox, right? And he like just like chucks it into the field at random, and he's got to go find it every time.
Star Wars wasn't even a thing yet.
Like savings.
So it says Ward cross-examined. So I assume Ward is like the guy watching him at the jail. Defendant did not say he saw Martha at her home that day. I don't recollect that he said what time it was that he said he saw her on the street near Spalding's store. He said someone paid him part of the money, but I don't think he said he got it from any person that day. So he's just saying, you lying. He said, this bitch said none of that. Oh, wait. Okay, so the first guy was Charles Seward. So it's the same person saying that he was lying.
So he's saying that he had lied prior.
Yeah, or maybe not lied, but
misremembered,
but that's a lot of information to misremember.
Yeah.
He said, because he's saying, I don't recollect what he said, like the time or when he saw her, or like just the very detailed information he gave in the last one. He's like, I don't actually remember if that happened.
He's like, I thought I remembered, but I don't actually remember.
Right. Juliet Webster testified, I overtook Mrs. Sylvia last Tuesday on the road from Austin's to this borough. 3 or 40 rods this side of the barn that was burned. I don't know what that means. So I think they measure things in rods, or I don't know what that means. But they use the word rods a lot. And I don't know what that means. But it says 3 or 40 rods this side of the barn that was burned. The defendant was with her. I was in a buggy. I saw a defendant on Friday or Saturday in John Bailey's office. He told me his name was Travis and that he was a brother of Alexander Reese's wife.
Let me interrupt you for a second. The rod, perch, or pole, sometimes also lug, is a surveyor's tool and unit of length. The various historical definitions, often between 3 and 8 meters. In modern U.S. customary units, it is defined as 16 and a half U.S. survey feet.
Okay.
So yes, it was a
feet had burned.
It says 3 or 40 rods. That's a big difference.
Yeah.
Maybe they meant 30 or 40 because there's a little, it's a 3 with a little dash. So maybe whoever was typing
well, maybe it was
little,
like it's supposed to be 3 to 4 because 16 and a half feet is supposed to be like 1.
Oh, yeah.
So
So
like
maybe
40
it
would
means
be
3 or
way,
4.
way, way too much. So maybe it was supposed to be like 3 to 4.
Yeah, especially if they're measuring like a barn or distance from the barn or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
I said he was the man that lost his wife out west and came here with his little girl, and he said he was. The day I overtook them, I took Miss Sylvia into my buggy and brought her to Mrs. Moore's near job locks. I think defendant was ahead of us 10 or 15 rods then. Before that, he and she were walking along the road like man and wife. He on one side and she on the other. As I got near them, they got further apart. She said she was glad I came along for she wanted a ride to town. After she got into the wagon, she turned around several times to look back at defendant. I did not look back. Think defendant had on the same clothes he wears today. So they were walking into town and they were acting all coupley, but as soon as someone got around, they were like,
Never mind.
You're like, just kidding.
Never mind. Yep. And they mentioned that a lot throughout here. Like I will get to it, but I think like he had said that he wanted to marry her or something before she was killed. But we'll get to that. Webster cross-examined. So same person. I am positive the defendant is the same man I met on the road there. Dr. Clarence W. Webb testified. I made an examination yesterday of the remains of the person burned. I found about 20 pounds of remains consisting of the trunk, small part of the head, jaw, and 4 teeth. There were about 8 ounces of the brain or a little less. The upper extremities were off close to the body, and about half the right thigh bone remains and about 1/3 of the left thigh bone. The person was a female. The pelvis was nearly entire, and the organs of the generation quite well preserved and somewhat diseased. The person was of slight build, the bones being slim. Webb cross-examined. I didn't weigh the remains, but approximated them. The heart had no wound in it. There was no skull, but part of the base of it. The remains of the lungs were there. The 4 teeth were on the right side of the jaw. It would be impossible to say that what the height of the person was. Frederick Reese testified. I am 15 years old and live in Charleston, about a half mile from Martha Sylvia's. My father is Alexander Reese. My uncle, George Travis, has been living with us this winter. Last Tuesday, he said he was going down Marsh Creek after some money. He said he has been at work for Mr. Bailey and that he was going down to Bailey's, but I don't know whether he said he was going after money. I can't tell what time he went away or what time he came back. It was after supper. When he came home, he warmed himself by the fire and then he washed and ate supper. Then he and my father went up to Martha Sylvia's after cattle he had bought of her. A cow, a yearling, and a 2-year-old. We all went to her house and Uncle George knocked twice. He said he guessed Martha wasn't at home. When we then got the cattle and drove them home, making some noise while driving them along. Yesterday morning, Uncle George said he was going to town to get some tobacco. Tuesday night, he said he has been down Marsh Creek to get some money. I don't remember where he said he got it. I think he said he paid her some on the street and some at the Wilcox house. Pa asked him if he got a receipt. He said he didn't, but he could prove it. That is a lot. I feel like that's a lot of information for like a 15-year-old to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is a lot of information.
Yeah.
I would be able to tell you all that.
Yeah.
And I'm an adult.
Right. Mrs. Rosalia Austin testified. I am the wife of CN Austin. We live in the corner of the road that turns down where Mrs. Sylvia lived. I saw her last Tuesday near noon with the defendant. They were going towards Wellsboro. He had on brown ducking overalls, long boots, a darkish coat, and an overshirt, the same color as his overalls. His walk was peculiar. When I first saw them, they were walking side by side and walked so until they got to the further end of our shed. After they got past the house, he walked slower and let her catch up with him. I saw his side face. He wore whiskers. Okay, so like there was a whole part that I cut out because there was like a whole conversation between multiple people about him like getting shaved. Like he had whiskers, I guess. So I assume like a little mustache or like beard thing going on.
Recently shaved like within the last like few days.
Yeah.
Ruffle.
And a lot of it, I think they mentioned it again soon, but like they mention his whiskers, and then at some point, like they'll say that he had whiskers when they saw him before the murder, and then after the murder, he no longer has them.
But that means he could have just shaved.
Yes, someone saw him getting shaved at some point, like, okay. But I cut that part out. Because the conversation was really long and they were just talking about him getting shaved.
I wonder if does that have any correlation with the murder?
I don't think so. I think they were just talking about like, because I don't think everybody knew him, so they were using that as a recognizable feature.
I wonder.
But then later on, he shaved, so they're like, well, this man doesn't have whiskers.
Well, I almost wonder if he shaved to make himself less recognizable, or because
possibly
during the attack, some of his whiskers could have gotten like ripped out and he shaved to cover that.
Yeah.
Though, I mean, it is just whiskers, so that really wouldn't do much of a difference. Like, if he was shaving like a full-on beard and mustache, then yeah, then maybe. But I feel like if it's just whiskers,
he's also wearing the same clothes. He's wearing the same clothes that people had seen him walking around in,
which is odd.
But I feel like back then they really only had.
It was probably normal because he was wearing work boots and ducking overalls, so that probably makes sense. Plus his jacket, like those are normal things to wear multiple times in a row.
Yeah. Like, it's not like...
Plus, he was arrested, so, like, he wouldn't have changed
clothes. Or, like, fancy clothes, and then, like, wore that, and then, like, back to the fancy clothes, or, like, vice versa.
Yeah. Let's see, where was I? Austin cross-examined. Defendant had a cap on. His trousers were in his boot tops. I saw them out of the kitchen window until they passed the house. Then I went out on the front porch to look at them. Which is such like an old lady thing to do, like back in that time. Like even now, like it's such like it's so realistic.
I would do that though. I'd be like, what's that?
They're like, she would have been like, she about to call her friend, be like, they hooking up. She said, Dolores, guess what? Chauncey Howard was sworn and testified. I live in Delmar on the road from Wellsboro to where the barn was burned, about 1/2 of a mile this side of the barn. Last Tuesday evening, about 7:30, a man called at my house and asked me for some matches. He He came to the door and knocked. I opened the door and stood in it with the door open. The light shone out on him so I could see him. He was a thick-set man, not very tall, and would weigh about 150 pounds. He wore brown overalls, the same color as the defendant has on now. I think he had an overshirt of the same color. He had a coat like the defendant wears. The defendant is the man who was there that night. I feel like it's like him processing it in real time. He's like, damn, this man wearing the same clothes. Damn, I handed this man some matches. Damn, a barn was on fire that night.
Damn, this is the man that was there. Like,
damn,
this is the man. Like,
damn. He had on a coat like the one the defendant wears. Defendant is the man who was there that night. He has shaved off his whiskers since then. So, like, he mentions the whiskers there too. Like, they just keep mentioning his whiskers. Like,
they're just targeting him.
Yeah.
Regardless,
he
like,
don't shave every day. He's trying to do odd jobs.
Whether it be like to try and disguise himself, or if it was just like a part of his regular routine, like that was the day he shaved his whiskers. Like,
right.
He just never grew a full-on beard. Like, maybe that was just like his thing.
And it just happened to be the day that he killed a woman and asked this man for matches. It's fine.
So the next day, it would have been the next day he would have shaved.
It's fine. It's nothing related.
It says, I gave him some matches and he turned and went to the road towards the barn that was burned that night. Look, I'm not victim blaming.
He's just like, here's these matches that you asked for, person that came to me in
with the barn that was unlocked.
And then it walks towards the barn that was torn down.
He should have locked the barn.
Right. Should have locked your barn. Shouldn't have given the murderer some matches.
Why are you giving random strangers matches anyway?
I don't think I would hand a random stranger a lighter or matches, like, just if they came and knocked on my door.
Like, okay,
so this is the 18, what would it say, 42?
I've been like, no, go buy your own matches. Go
like
to the
1842, like neighbors, matches. Like they were all like, oh, like cup of sugar kind of shit. Like, yeah. I feel like it's reasonable. Like, it's not like someone would have given him a match.
Like, I feel like if he knew him, it would have been different, but he didn't know him.
I don't know, but I feel still like small town kind of vibes. Like, I feel like if he was staying with his brother-in-law, then this person would have known that. I feel like things like spread quickly.
Cup of sugar is very different from, hey, you got some matches,
right?
I know, maybe he was,
and I
like,
love like okay, so he like murders this lady.
Fire like in my house. Not at a barn, not to kill a woman, like
not at the barn I'm walking towards right now.
I don't know. I feel like it is in similar area of like cup of sugar. I mean, not quite, but like I feel like I don't know.
Oh no, I feel like it's still odd.
Brother-in-laws and like
arson. Fine.
I feel like it's still odd.
I mean, it is odd, but we also didn't live.
And like it's like the middle of the night. Yeah, it's 7 o'clock.
Like middle of the night, then no, for sure.
It's dark outside.
Yeah, of course, it's fucking odd.
Other than like the light coming from inside his house.
Oh my god!
So that's weird. So like, if it was like noontime and this man was doing yard work outside in the field or something, and he like walks up to the house that's closest and asks for matches for a cigarette, right? That would make sense maybe. But like, it's 7 o'clock at night. It's dark out. He can't see the man.
What time of year is this, though?
I don't know, but he says that it's dark out because he only sees him because the light from inside his house when he opens the door.
Okay, so if it's 7 o'clock and it's dark, that means it's like either like spring or fall. Not quite winter yet, because right now it gets dark at 5 o'clock. I don't know. It would still be warm enough, I think. Like, I don't think, like, I'm thinking of it in aspect of, like, he needs to light a fire so he stays warm, like, kind of thing.
I guess.
Still warm enough.
I was thinking more along the lines of, like, yeah.
Yeah, no.
I don't know. I still feel like it's weird.
Maybe he needs it to light his lantern. Because they didn't.
Yeah, but then he would have a lantern.
Well, his lantern's dead. He left it with his horse. I don't fucking know.
Who knows? We weren't alive back then.
He don't got no lantern.
This man just said, "Here's some matches, random stranger."
He's like, "Can I get some matches?" And they were like, "Heck yeah, have these matches."
Right.
Like, it doesn't seem like there was any detail in there, like any conversation other than, "Can I have some matches?" And yeah, you can have these matches.
That's just so odd. And then he just takes off walking
To a complete stranger in the dark.
Absolutely fucking not. But then again, I don't fuck nobody.
Right. Howard cross-examined. I live about a half a mile from town. My house stands perhaps 20 rods from the road. The clock struck 7 a little before the defendant knocked. I took the matches from my vest and handed them to him. It was dark. I didn't see anybody with him. I looked out after he went through the gate. I never saw him before. Saw him the next morning in jail. He had not very long chin whiskers and a mustache. I did not go up to the fire. Saw the light of it around 9 o'clock. Yeah, so he just gave a complete stranger some matches.
Okay. Yeah.
In the dark. Henry Van Valkenburg testified. I am a clerk in Osgood's store in this borough. I have seen defendant often, saw him Tuesday afternoon about 5 o'clock in the store. He was alone. I saw him yesterday morning about 9 o'clock at the store when his brother-in-law, A.C. Reese, was with him. Mr. Reese called for a pound of tobacco for George. And while the other clerk was putting up the tobacco, I spoke to Reese about the fire. He told me whose barn it was. I told him I heard a body was found there and asked if he knew whose it was. Reese said it was thought to be the body of Mrs. Sylvia, but Travis said he didn't think that possible because he paid her $53 in front of Cole's Hotel just before the buses went to the depot Tuesday afternoon, and he thought she had gone to her husband in Indiana. So this is like right before he was like arrested.
Wait, there were buses?
That's what it says.
Wait, but there were cars.
It says there are buses. I mean, he got there somehow from Michigan.
That's weird.
Is it though? Because it's public transportation. I feel like public transportation became more. Wait, what?
What?
1830.
1830.
Apparently, from Britannica. I mean, I feel like Britannica is a pretty reliable source. Okay.
I'm confused. How did buses come before cars?
I feel like things were like public transportation was probably worked on before individual transportation.
Right. I feel like that would have been
trains were a thing, right?
Yeah, but trains make sense, but cars don't make sense. Like, what?
Well, it was a steam engine car, I think is what it was saying. And even if not, I feel like they could have had a few horses.
It could have also been like a multi-person buggy.
A longer
right.
coach.
Either way, he had a bus. He assumed that she had gotten. Travis said he didn't think that was possible because he paid her $53 in front of Cole's Hotel just before the buses went to the depot Tuesday afternoon, and he thought she had gone to her husband's in Indiana. He said she had lately received a letter from her husband, and he wanted her to come to him, and that the reason of her selling her cattle so cheap was that she wanted money to go with. I asked him if she was prepared to go. He said not. That was her way, to go right off without any preparation. One of them said they were going to the depot before they went home to see if she bought a ticket. Mr. Osgood asked Travis if he had witnessed to the trade for the cattle and the payment of the money. He said he hadn't except Mr. Reese's little boy. I understood he meant that as to be the bargain and not as the payment. They seemed satisfied that she had gone west. Travis said he hadn't seen her since 4 o'clock on Tuesday. when he paid her the money. He seemed to be unusually nervous and restless and changed his position very often. So I feel like this man's like had a good like reason for her not being there if he would have done well at hiding the body, getting rid of the body after he killed her.
Yeah.
Like her going to see her husband is reasonable.
And
Right.
I feel like you can also be like, oh, well, they were weird around each other because they were having an affair.
Right.
And like that's why they were like separating and stuff. But then why did he kill her?
Right. Van Valkenburg cross-examined. I hadn't then heard that defendant was suspected of this offense. He traded at our store some, and I had seen him and talked with him many times. The Wilcox house was not mentioned during the talk. He said he paid her the money in front of the Coles house and that she followed the buses right down the street towards the depot. He was at the store 5 or 6 times Tuesday afternoon. That's a lot of times to be in the store.
But between 5 and 6 times.
Yeah, it says between 5 and 6 times.
Yeah, that
Tuesday
is
afternoon. Like within an afternoon, not even a whole day.
that is a lot.
Sounds like he was stressed out.
I mean, there was this one case of this guy that had killed someone and then went in and out of like a store multiple times and like walked around the store just to like be on camera and like just
right. It's probably like not that there were cameras, but like
just to be
probably just like, oh, I saw him in the store, but like hoping maybe they didn't remember what time
yeah.
he was seen in the store, and he could have been like, oh, well, I was at the store at that time, and like the person that remember went and been like, oh yeah, no, I totally saw them at the store.
But then when you hear between 5 and 6 times, it's like, well, shit.
Right.
Make a list next time. Like, quit forgetting shit.
Minnie Borden and Janie McIrony.
I'm sorry. Did you say McIrony?
Yeah, I think I said it wrong, but I kind of wish it was McIrony. It was Mick and Roy. Mick and Roy. So they testified that they met Mrs. Sylvia and a man who looked like the defendant walking together towards the depot on the main street in Wellsboro on Tuesday evening around 7 o'clock. Mr. V. Culver testified that he saw Mrs. Sylvia and defendant together about 4 o'clock Tuesday afternoon at the corner of C.C. Mather's store, and that he afterwards saw them about 7 p.m. near Job Locks in the eastern part of the borough. He was not positive that the man with her last time was the defendant, but thought it was. They went up the hill north from Locks. Mr. V. Culver testified that he saw Miss Sylvia. Wait, I just read that. Hattie Barber and Zellie Moore, 2 little girls, testified that they saw Mrs. Sylvia and the man with her east of the depot going toward Job Locks about 7 o'clock Tuesday evening. They described the man dressed like the defendant. George F. Butler testified that he had a conversation with defendant in relation to his transactions with Miss Sylvia. Defendant said he paid her $53, 5 in silver, 3 $10 bills, and the rest in small money in the Wilcox house sitting room about 10 minutes before 4 o'clock Tuesday afternoon, and he did not see her after that. Defendant said he came from Miss Sylvia's house to Stokesdale and up the railroad track to Wellsboro and went home up the Henry Hill and across by the crossroad. Witness arrested defendant in front of the Wilcox blocks. Told him he had a warrant for him. Defendant said it was all right and never asked what he was arrested for, but on the way to jail, he said he didn't know whether witness had a warrant or not. The Commonwealth here rested. The defendant declined to offer any evidence at this time, and Justice Brewster committed him to wait the action of the grand jury. So he was like, they were like, yeah, you're being arrested. And he was like, all right, bet.
I mean, okay, I guess. Like, whatever. It's fine.
Yeah. Apparently that's like his mood throughout this entire thing too. Like they'll mention it a little bit more later, but like he doesn't show like any emotion the whole time.
That's odd.
Yeah. But he argues that it like he's very adamant about the fact that like it wasn't him that killed her.
Well, who was it? Mr. Man Who Got Matched. Also, if you're trying to prove your innocence, maybe don't wear the same outfit that you wore on the night that everyone saw you with her and then saw you asking for matches and walking in the direction of the barn that was burnt down with her body.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The crowd of spectators slowly left the room, many persons lingering to get a good look at the prisoner. The popular verdict concerning his personal appearance was decidedly unfavorable. After waiting some time for the crowd to disperse, the prisoner was handcuffed to an officer and taken away to jail. His case will be laid before the grand jury to convene on the 7th of next month. So I cut out some of it because it was like kind of repetitive, but they did try to appeal the trial and were declined. There were some good reasons that they had. So like one of the jury members was like related to Miss Sylvia. It was like her sister or cousin or something. And there was some more reason, but they ended up denying it. So it says, George Travis, Martha Sylvia was murdered on the 3rd of last April. You, who was last seen with her, was charged with the commission of the crime. You have had a patient and impartial trial. Your defense has been conducted by counsel of recognized learning and ability. The testimony, however, persuaded the jury beyond a reasonable doubt of your guilt, and they have found you guilty of the murder in the first degree. We have reviewed the trial upon a motion to set aside the verdict, and we are satisfied that no injustice has been done to you. The evidence not only justifies, but it requires the verdict rendered. Your crime is without excuse or palliation. It is cold-blooded and atrocious. Your victim was a slender and defenseless woman. You had won her confidence. She trusted and loved you. You had promised to make her your wife, although you had a wife living, from whom you had been separated but a few months. With her heart light with hope and warm with affection, she started with you on that night on the road towards her home. You murdered this woman who loved you. You placed her lifeless body in a barn by the roadside and applied the torch to the barn to destroy the evidence of the murder. You then possessed yourself of the little personal estate of which she had been the owner. There is no circumstance of wickedness wanting in the outline of the said story. We shall not dwell upon it, but proceed at once to close the record. So far as this court is concerned, by pronouncing the penalty which the law affixates to the crime of which you have been found guilty, it is that on such day as shall be designated by the governor of this commonwealth, you, George Travis, be hanged by the neck until you are dead, and may the Lord have mercy on your soul. They said, fuck you, this bitch loved you, and you murdered her.
Yeah.
Yeah. During the sentence, Travis showed very little emotion. His face was slightly flushed, and 2 or 3 times he stepped forward a little nervously to spit in a spittoon. At the conclusion of the sentence, he nodded slightly towards the judge and resumed his seat with what was evidently intended to be a careless smile. He was at once remanded to his cell in the jail. So yeah.
Interesting. So he got hung?
There's more to it, but yeah. Basically, he got hung. I'll explain in detail what happened to him in a little bit. It says November 4th, 1884. So it says he moved there in 1882. He moved to Wellsboro. And I think the trial took place in 1883. So it's been a little bit. It's been a little while.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah. A dispatch was received in this borough from Pittsburgh yesterday afternoon, announcing that the Supreme Court of the state had affirmed the judgment of the Court of Oyer and Terminer of this county in the case of the Commonwealth against George Travis. This is in effect a decision by the court of last resort that Travis was legally convicted of murder in the first degree and that he must pay the dread penalty. Travis was arrested in this borough on the 4th of April, 1883, on the charge of having murdered Martha Sylvia the evening before. Partly consumed body of Mrs. Sylvia was discovered on the evening of April 3rd in the burning embers of a barn Mr. Charles Austin in the neighboring township of Charleston, which had evidently been set on fire and which was totally consumed. The human remains were identified by some keys, buttons, and a locket found with them. Circumstances pointed very strongly towards Travis as the guilty person on this trial, which began on the 10th and closed on the 17th of July, 1883. Evidence enough was adduced to convince the jury that he was guilty of the offense with which he stood charged. The case was taken to the Supreme Court, and it was argued at the term of the court held in Philadelphia last May, but the decision was reserved until the meeting of the current term at Pittsburgh yesterday. This decision of the Supreme Court renders it morally certain that Travis will be executed. His only possible hope of escape from death now resting on it an application to the Board of Pardons. The date of his execution is to be fixed by Governor Pattinson after he receives official notice of the decision of the court. There has never yet been an execution for a capital offense in this county, and the trial, conviction, and sentence of the defendant in this case have excited a deep popular interest. So everyone was like, ooh, an execution.
Yeah, it used to be like a huge town event. Everyone would go to see an execution.
Yeah. There were a lot of people that wanted to attend it. November 19th, 1884, last Saturday, Messengers, Wilson, and Packer, the counsel of George Travis, performed the unpleasant duty of informing their client that the Supreme Court had rendered an adverse decision on his case. The prisoner received the announcement with great stoicism. He said he would prefer to be hung rather than remain in jail until spring. But if they did hang him, they would hang an announced man. I don't know what that means, but I assume it means like he thinks he's innocent still. That's what I get from like the context clues. Travis asserts that he had heard of this decision of the court before he was informed of it by his counsel. Several days ago, he told Deputy Sheriff Swan that he knew what the decision was, and it is not improbable that he heard it from some prisoner recently incarcerated. We understand that no time since this trial has Travis been known to exhibit any emotion, either for the crime of which he was convicted, or for the awful doom that hangs over his head. A certified copy of the record of the case was sent to Governor Pattison last Saturday, and it was probable that the date for the execution of the prisoner will be announced within weeks. January 6, 1885. Governor Pattison this morning signed the death warrant of George Travis of Tioga County. The execution will take place January 15th. 150 people applied to witness the execution, but many of them were denied due to limited space.
Or died.
Yep. They were denied due to limited space. During his last night on Earth, Travis slept more than he did the night before, but he was still quite uneasy. Lying down and getting up several times, he protested his innocence to his guard, Mr. Kaitlynn, and talked considerably about his trial and about the preparations for his execution. At his request, the operation of gallows was minutely described to him. During the night, Mr. Kaitlynn read passages from the Bible to him at his request. He finally went to sleep about 4 o'clock and slept until 6. After breakfast, he was shaved and he then put on a new suit of black clothes furnished by the county commissioners. Between 10 and 11 o'clock, his 4 sisters who had visited him before took their last farewell of the doomed man. The parting was heartbreaking. Reverend Mr. Ware accompanied the afflicted women on their visit and remained with Travis some time after they left. At the prisoner's request, his brother, Levi Travis of Middlebury, went to the jail before noon and remained until after the execution, showing great emotion during the final scene. It was nearly 12 o'clock when Sheriff Baxter entered the jail, and then all those who held passes countersigned by him were admitted, to the number of about 110. The sheriff, accompanied by his chosen deputies and by Coroner Francis of Knoxville, went at once to the prisoner's cell, which was in the lower tier opposite the jail door. Reverend Ware was already with Travis. On entering the cell, the sheriff told George his time had come, and Mr. Francis proceeded to read the death warrant issued by the governor. During the reading of the warrant, Travis listened intently, and he showed some emotion. After the warrant had been read, Reverend Ware read part of the service for the visitation of the prisoners and asked Travis more than once to say whatever he wished. He declined, however, to make any statement, and told Mr. Ware that he had none at the gallows. The services in the cell concluded. The sheriff led the way down the corridor to the gallows, followed by Travis, who walked between the deputies H.T. Kaitlynn of Lawrenceville and E.P. Higgins of Bath, New York. Travis showed no weakness or special emotion in walking to his death. He was placed under the gallows and turned facing down the corridor towards his cell. The sheriff asked him if he had anything to say. He said he had not, but asked to see Associate Judge Baxter. The judge was not in the jail, and the fact being reported to Travis, he said, "All right." The prisoner's arms were then strapped behind him, and his legs were pointed at the knees and ankles. The black cap was drawn over his face. The noose adjusted around his neck, and at a silent signal from one of the deputies, the sheriff cut the rope at 12:25 p.m. The ponderous weight dropped without noise, and Travis was jerked upwards and fell back, suspended 2 feet from the ground. The twist of the rope turned him halfway around so that he faced the wall. He hung perfectly still for about 2 minutes and then struggled somewhat, evidently dying from strangulation. Doctors A.M. Loop of Nelson, W.R. Francis of Knoxville, and H.R. Ainsworth of Addison were in attendance and kept note of the dying man's pulse. At the end of about 20 minutes, he was pronounced dead, and after he had hung 32 minutes, the tackle was hitched to the great weight, and it was drawn up. All that was mortal of George Travis was slowly lowered into his coffin. On making the examination, the physicians decided that his neck had not been broken. His remains were delivered to his relatives, and it is understood that they have been buried in a cemetery in Middlebury. And then just some little facts. Travis was the first person ever executed in Tioga County. The young daughter who Travis brought with him had gone after this and went to live with her maternal grandfather and grandmother in Michigan. It is understood that Travis's wife, whom he left in Michigan when he returned to Tioga County in 1882, was still in Michigan and ended up living with another man. The trial, conviction, and execution of George Travis, including board and attorney's fees, cost the county about $1,400, and the execution cost about $150. Several days after the execution of George Travis, various bits of sensational gossip were floating around this neighborhood to the effect that after his body was delivered to his friends, they succeeded in resurrecting him, that he was now at work on the Pine Creek Railway as brakeman, etc. It is not worthwhile to contradict these wild reports so long as they simply passed mouth to mouth, but as some of our exchanges in neighboring counties are printing them, it may be well to state that there's no foundation for them. It is true that Travis's neck was not broken, but he was dead beyond a doubt. If his friends worked over his body in the vain hope that his life was not extinct, it was perhaps not an unnatural thing to do, but certain it is that the man paid the penalty of his crime by his death, and his body was promptly buried. The end.
Imagine having been a murderer, and then you're convicted, and you're hung, or hanged, whatever the proper verbiage is.
I believe it's hanged.
Yeah, I think it's hanged.
You're hanged, and then there's all these rumors that you were revived by your friends, and you now work on the railway.
Yeah.
Also, there was way too much detail in the description of his death.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot of detail. I don't feel like it needed to be that detailed. Like, everything else was not.
It was there, so I figured I'd read it. But yeah.
He said, if I gotta read it, you gotta listen to it.
Right.
So yeah, that is a hometown homicide right there, which is kind of a sneak peek at the next episode we're gonna have out.
So to give a little preview, because I will be telling a story next podcast. I'm going to be telling the story of a murder that happened to one of my friend's cousin that happened, I don't know, about 45 minutes from where I live, but like, it is a small area. I live in the Delmarva area, so everything is pretty close to home here. But yeah, I think it being one of my closest friends' cousins, it makes it pretty close to home.
Close.
Yeah. And I already talked about the shopping cart killer in my area, but next podcast I will have a story about a Richmond serial killer who was the first person to ever be convicted based on DNA evidence. And Richmond is about 2 hours away from where I currently live. I did live in Richmond, Virginia for a little while, so it is kind of close to home in that aspect. And it's so strange to hear something that's so close to home. And that's kind of why we wanted to do that, is to show you guys that, these true crime cases, they aren't just somewhere far away, somewhere that you've never heard of. They are, cases that happen in your hometowns, places that
like even this one, even though it happened a long time ago, it happened where I grew up, and I know like I know people related to these people.
Yeah, so it's interesting to get a different perspective and to kind of look at it in a different way. So we're really excited for the next episode. We are currently, however, filming on New Year's Eve.
Yes.
So I would like to go ahead and say a couple of words for the new year. Despite everything that is kicking off the new year, let's hope that we can at least make it better than 2020. That's the new bar. Better than 2020.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we make it better than 2020, then we're all right.
Right. Or at least better than 2020, better than 2021. I'll accept it. I will accept it.
If anybody's interested, we are also on Spotify.
Yes, we are on
Apple Music, and we do have a TikTok where we have like clips and stuff, and you can like ask us questions and whatnot.
Yeah. So we have a Spotify and Apple Podcasts, YouTube, obviously, Anchor Podcasts. We're on there. We're on TikTok. If you search us up in any of the podcasting areas like Spotify or Anchor or Apple, it's just Manic Panic. If you search us up anywhere else, it's Manic Panic Podcast. And then our email address is manicpanicpodcast123. That is open for anyone with suggestions for video ideas or anyone that maybe might want to come on the podcast at some point.
Yeah, any sort of collab or anything like that would be cool.
Yeah, open.
It's called Manic Panic, so it doesn't have to be related to true crime either. It could be, you can talk about anything you want for the most part.
Yeah.
Like if it's interesting, we'll talk about it. And Kaitlynn, did you want to plug any of your socials?
Sure. Sometimes I stream on Twitch. I am at cat _Baggins 98. You can find my Twitter and Instagram also at cat _Baggins 98. Yeah, so I stream many different games. I'll probably start streaming Stardew Valley very soon because I just got it on my computer. And my regular social media, my Instagram's at cat _Baggins 98 for that one. Twitter is the cat's meow 2298. So yeah, I don't have much, but there it is.
I guess if we want to plug our personal socials, mine on TikTok is Miss Danger, but with an M instead of the N. Luca, anything else you want to plug, personal or otherwise?
My other social media is all ugly _boy, and it's all spelled UGLEE. I don't remember which ones. Some of them have boy spelled with an I. Some of them have boy spelled with a Y. Depends on if the name was taken yet or not. But yeah, I don't really post all that much. I'm on like TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook.
But yeah, that's the podcast for this week, you guys. So
leave any comments or suggestions below if you want to tell us about any of like your hometown like true crime things.
Let us know what you want to cover.
Comments, or you can send it in an email if you want to.
Yeah, we can do an audience submissions episode. We could do we could cover cases that you guys suggest. If you guys want to suggest cases, you can always do that in the comments or in our email address. We will, of course, get to them when we can. But yeah, we really like doing the whole true crime thing. We definitely want to branch out from true crime. I know that, maybe with Kaitlynn, we had talked about doing like a cryptid or creepypasta, something kind of folklore-y, tall tale-y kind of episode.
And I want to do like mental health at some point, maybe talk about transness or just LGBT stuff for an episode, stuff like that.
Yeah, we've got a lot of ideas. So any suggestions, anything like that, go ahead and send it on over to us. We'll add it to the list. But I think with that, that's the end of the episode.
Yep. Thank you guys so much for having me on. I'm so excited for next week and being able to share my story and like to be able to be on future episodes. This was so much fun.
Yeah, we're gonna have so much fun with it. I'm excited.
Oh.
Okay.
Well, I think I'm gonna go get stuff to make buffalo chicken dip.
All right, so goodbye to the peoples.
Bye, everybody.